Hi, I'm Morten Solvik, Vice President of Mahler Foundation and host and producer of the Mahler Hour, where we bring you the personalities, places, and projects happening right now in the Mahler community around the world. Welcome to the third season of the Mahler Hour. We have a number of topics in store for you in the coming year, the continuation of our series on Alma Mahler, spotlights on individual symphonies, interviews with leading artists and personalities in the Mahler world, and much more. Should you miss any of our future episodes or past shows, remember you can see them all on our website. This episode will be very special. We will be exploring the legacy of the great Mahler biographer Henri-Louis de La Grange, in particular, the archive, which you can see behind me, of priceless materials he left behind upon his death at the age of 93 in 2017. Many a Mahler scholar has made their way here to this building in the Rue Vézelay in the 8th arrondissement of Paris to do their research in the Médiathèque Musicale Mahler, as it was previously known. If you were lucky, you might also have had the chance to meet the master himself, who had already made his collection available to the public. Today, we are going to take a closer look at all this in person and with the help of my special guests. Before we begin, let me remind everyone attending live to post any questions you might have to the comments section. We will get to these at the end of our show. Don't forget to include your name or at least the city and country you are writing from. Also, the Mahler Hour is brought to you by Mahler Foundation, so if you want to support our activities, please become a member. Just go to our website at mahlerfoundation.org for all of the details. Before we take a closer look at this wonderful library, let's take a moment to remember Henri-Louis de La Grange, who started it all. And to help me with this, I want to welcome my first guest, Vincent Mouret. Vincent is an expert on Mahler recordings who has helped Mahler Foundation tremendously by curating our vast online Mahler discography, but he is also the Vice President of Bibliothèque Musicale La Grange, Fleuret. Welcome, Vincent.
Hello, Morten. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Please come a little closer. So you were a friend of Henri-Louis. What type of person was he?
First of all, I like to say how deeply I miss Henri-Louis. And I'm not talking about the musicologist. I'm talking about the man. I'm talking about the friend. Henri-Louis was a marvelous man. I'm very grateful to have been his friend for many years, for 20 years. I guess many people, especially people connected today, were his friend for much longer time than me. But we really had a fantastic relationship, a fantastic friendship.
I think we have a photo of the two of you taking a walk. It's a beautiful photo.
Yeah, it's a picture, I think, in the Bois de Boulogne, Paris. Mm-hmm. I like this picture. And it was a kind of a ritual for the weekend. You know, Henri-Louis had a very sophisticated but regular life. He was spending the winter in Marrakech, the summer in Toblach, and spring and autumn was more in Paris. And very often Saturday he was giving a call. I was living very close from here. He was saying, Vincent, will you come with me to have a walk with a tempo with a dog?
That's right.
Henri-Louis had many dogs. And after we had a nice lunch just in front of this room in the dining room. There are so many things to say about Henri-Louis. I like to mention he was passionate, of course, about Mahler, but about so many things. He was a big fan of cinema. He was a big fan of Robert Altman movies, Ingmar Bergman. I remember probably the last movies of his life we were together. We saw a very strange Russian movie and also a movie by Xavier Dolan. So he was so open-minded, interested in everything. And we had many discussions about Mahler, of course, but also many discussions about everything. He was reading a lot and again, interested in everything. I think he was a citizen of the world. He was half American, half French. Yes. We always forget that he was, in France, we believe he was only French, but he was not.
Yes.
And he visited so many countries in the world. He was interested in Japanese music, in Balinese music. He did scuba diving.
Yes,
you know.
Yes, I did know
when
that.
He was younger.
Yes, indeed.
And he told me that probably it was his favorite period of his life when he was doing scuba diving in the Wet Sea, for example.
I think he had to give it up at 70. Wasn't it around 70 that he had to give it up?
He did, indeed. Yeah. And also, I think he met all the famous musician that counted in the second half of the 20th century. You have a picture here, maybe you noticed, with Pau Casals. He is near the pianist Yvonne Lefebvre. He met with Stravinsky, he had a lunch with Furtwängler. So, and now I have regrets. I should have discussed much more with him. And maybe to finish, something I like with Henri-Louis, he liked to shock a little bit people.
Yeah.
And several times when we were discussing with people about the Fearless Leader by Richard Strauss, he was saying, oh, but it's for rotten fruits. And which is not so untrue at the end, because it's a bit disconnected from the 1940s when it was composed. But I think he was very happy to see that people were shocked by his words.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the Mahler aspect, because of course, that's one of the reasons we're sitting here. It was one of the most important events of his life, being introduced to Mahler. And we have some video of him recalling this event himself in 1945.
When I landed in New York in 1945, I rushed to Carnegie Hall, which was around the corner, to see if there was, by chance, a concert. And what did I find? A conductor whom I admired tremendously, and that was Bruno Walter. Bruno Walter conducted the Ninth Symphony. I surely read Mahler's name, but since I didn't know who Mahler was, it was the name of Bruno Walter that really attracted me. And so I went to this concert, and I found myself already 3 weeks later hearing Bruno Walter again conduct another symphony, the fourth, with the Philadelphia Orchestra, because the first concert was the New York Philharmonic, and the second one was the Philadelphia Orchestra, which means in less than a month, I'd heard 2 Mahler symphonies. Well, that obviously means that he interested me already very much. I was just 21 then, and here was Mahler entering my life. It was such a stroke of luck that so much interest was awakened in me when I was 21. It was so unlikely. I was, after all, half French, half American, but nothing to do with Germany, absolutely not. And yet I was deeply into Austrian music, because Mahler remains today an Austrian composer. Quite quickly, I decided that I want to write about Mahler.
And last year, I think you were there, we attended an interview by Elia Winbal about Mahler. And he was explaining that when he was a teenager in Tel Aviv, he attended his first Mahler concert, and he said, I immediately had the feeling that this music was written for me. It was a very strong sentence. Unfortunately, I never discussed that with Henri-Louis, but I think we all have this feeling that Mahler music is just composed for herself, for myself. And Henri-Louis, I think, of course, loved passionately Mahler's music, but he was also in love with Mahler, the man. Of course, he knew everything about Mahler's life, but he was always defending Mahler's position very, very strongly. And I would like to mention two demands from Henri-Louis, two fights. One was about the fight that in the 80s and the 90s, many conductors were conducting the Knabenwunderhorn with 2 singers in duets. He was against this, and I think he won this. It doesn't happen anymore today. The second fight, afraid he did not, this is the order of the movement of the Sing Symphony. And I think his position was that there is no definitive order. Mahler was hesitating, but he believed that musically, Adagio third movement after the scherzo is better. And if you accept, I like the Mahler Foundation to post a long article that Henri-Louis wrote before his death about this, because I think it was a very important fight for him.
But it was a musical fight. In fact,
yes,
when this broke out, he asked me, I live in Vienna, so he asked me, what did he perform in January of, I think it was 1907, the first performance and the only performance I think he conducted in Vienna. And I found it in the Musikverein, and indeed, Scherzo was the third movement, not the second movement. And I remember his deflated reaction when I sent the information to him about that. He didn't want that to be true, because musically it didn't make sense to him.
I know, but many conductors do now Adagio second movement, but I discussed with them and they agree that musically it makes more sense to have the Scherzo second. Okay.
I'm not sure. I think I kind of like the Andante second, but that's all right. All right. So one of his prized possessions was a Rodin bust, and I know many of you have already been noticing them behind us. There's a little bit of a story there in terms of the Rodin bust. We have the person, one of the people involved in this. Of course, the bust was made by Rodin when Mahler was still alive. It was incredibly inspired work. And maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what we're seeing behind us, because there's a story here.
Yeah, so Rodin and Mahler met in April and October 1909. So they worked together, and Rodin really wanted to meet with Mahler to prepare the bust. I have something interesting here. This small booklet that I can show to the camera. So it was printed for Mahler's 50th birthday and distributed to 100 Mahler friends in September 1910 in Munich during the concert of the creation of the 8th Symphony. And inside this booklet, you have a picture of the bust, which is a plaster made by Rodin. So we know that Mahler never saw the bust, but he saw the picture. And there is a very long, many letters between Karl Moll, so Alma, stepfather, and Rodin to discuss the bust. He sent a first version, which is the model A. So the bronze you can see here. And then he sends 3 models B, which is the other one. The bronze, probably difficult to see on the camera. The bronze is more Rodin. The B is more Mahler. And Karl Moll sent back the bust. He was not happy with it. And finally, they selected the model B, so the plaster one here. And I love this bust. I really love it. You know, there are many busts of Mahler in the world. This is the only one which for me is really beautiful. It's really Mahler. And there was an exhibition about Mahler at the Musée d'Orsay years ago. And I remember Henri-Louis, who stayed for a long time, maybe 20 minutes in front of this bust. He was really in love with this bust.
But he owned both of these.
So the bronze one was produced by the Musée Rodin in the 60s. Henri-Louis bought one of them. The President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing bought one of them. Maybe it will be sold one day, I don't know. And Sir Georg Solti bought another one. Mm-hmm. And the white one, the plaster, it's a copy. It's like this.
It's a resin.
It's a resin copy. The thing you can buy in the stores of the museums. And in 2014 we produced 20 models of this model B, but made from the original molds of Rodin.
With the bronze patina and a plaster patina.
Yeah, in fact, yeah, because it's silicone, as we said, it's a resin, so it's decorated to imitate either bronze or plaster.
Mm-hmm. And for those of you who are longtime viewers of the Mahler Hour, it's one of those that's behind me when I'm broadcasting from my home in Vienna. And I've had some questions online about this, where did it come from and so on. I hope this helps answer that question. It was a limited run of busts. We hope that perhaps the museum will do another one so that Mahler fans will have another chance to buy them.
They're not so keen because the Rodin Museum is always very careful about the number of copies of each object by Rodin. Normally it's never more than 32 in total.
Well, there's the answer to that question I never really properly answered. Of course, Henri-Louis' collection of materials was vast, and it included books, recordings, letters, diaries, objects of various sorts, and of course, autograph scores. Here he is again with a brief introduction to his most prized possessions.
I leave a lot of things behind me. Thanks to the generosity of many people, thanks to Anna, for instance, generosity. I have some priceless Mahler manuscripts. I have especially this huge collection of documents, which I think is unparalleled anywhere in the world. They must live on, they must absolutely be preserved, and therefore I have to arrange many things to make sure that nothing gets lost and things remain at the disposal of people who need to see these things. So this is maybe the most important thing in the house. This is the vault where we keep all the precious things that have to be protected from water, from fire naturally, considering manuscripts as being totally alive. And this is, of course, one very important thing for me. It's an object. It was the only present that I got from, well, I mean, I did get Alma Mahler's confidence, which was a huge present, but this was her only concrete present. She said it was the last baton of Mahler. She called me Baron because it's true that when I was young, I had that title. And one day I decided that I preferred to have a title that was attached to my work. I'm very honored to belong to my family, but I did think my work was far more important than anything else. And this is also something interesting. With this pen, Mahler was signing various programs for people in the train when he left the premiere of the 8th Symphony in September 1910. A few months before he died. I got that when I bought actually the letters of Mahler to Countess Wiedenburg. Now the next thing is also very exciting, and that I have thanks to the secretary, the last secretary of Bruno Walter, the famous conductor who was also the closest disciple to Mahler and the man to whom he wrote the most important, probably, letters he ever wrote in his life. And this is the glasses that he had. This was a present from Susie Danziger, who was a great friend of mine, of whom I was very fond. Naturally, I treasure them. They were made in Munich, so they were probably maybe bought there at the time of the 8th Symphony. But this, of course, is the most precious item in this whole building. This is the first orchestral manuscript of the finale of the 9th Symphony. And this is a manuscript that was given by Mahler to Osip Gavrilovich, the pianist, who was his last pupil. And this is the most moving thing of all in this manuscript, is the end here. This, the world, that's world, and that's in German, Lebwohl, farewell, pianissimo. And this is Toblach, 2nd September 1990. So that's the end of the 9th Symphony. It was a very special item, and of course it is the prize possession of the library, and for me one that breaks my heart, because everything that's written on it, and because you can feel Mahler, you can see practically Mahler writing these notes. And it is the last finished symphony, completed symphony.
Well, he was very moved in that, you can tell, and his sense of reverence for Mahler is so clear. But he expresses a concern for the future.
Yeah, but if you accept, I'd like to give a big thank you to Jason Starr.
Yes, I will certainly give him a big thanks.
Yeah, I don't know if he's connected, but I think it was fantastic to shoot this movie just a few months before the difficult months of Henri-Louis' life.
These These selections are from a film by Jason Starr. I will, at the end, we'll give you the full citation. And Jason did a wonderful job with Henri-Louis' life, really.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I love this movie. And this is probably the best way to be introduced to Henri-Louis' life.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were asking about the future, and yes, as you said, we're here in what was the Médiathèque Musicale Mahler, which is today the Bibliothèque Musicale La Grange Fleuret. And this library was very important to Henri-Louis because Henri-Louis is concerned about the future. He was not interested about the past of his life. He wanted to build something, and he was concerned about the future of this library, about the fact that we would be able to have to continue to maintain it and to make public the collections he built together with Maurice Fleuret during all these years. And Henri-Louis asked me to become the president of the Médiathèque Musicale Mahler in 2014 when he was becoming older, but he was fully aware about the discussions we had with the Fondation Royaumont to build a solid partnership. And I think today we have the full results of this partnership. First, we have this beautiful building, totally renovated, and the 2 floors that were Henri-Louis' private apartment are now part of the library. So it's a full building dedicated to music for researchers and for anybody who would like to enter and visit here. But what makes me really happy is that now we have music in this building. There is a nice concerto that was where we had the books in the past. It's a beautiful room, and I attended already several concerts here. It's fantastic. I'd like to thank Francis Maréchal from Fondation Royaumont, who dedicated a lot of his time to make this project possible, and he did an amazing job. And also thank La Fondation de France, who injected some money in the renovation, and the Ministère de la Culture. So I would like to invite all the people listening us today to visit us. It's important to have people here visiting us and discovering all the fantastic archive that we have here.
Vincent Mouret, thank you very much for being our guest
My
today.
pleasure. Thank you, Martin.
Yes. And so to turn to the present and to how things are constructed now and what we have to offer through this library, I'm going to invite my next guest, the Chief Archivist, Gabriela Elgarrista. Welcome, Gabriela.
Thank you. Just to give you a correction, I'm not the Chief Archivist.
Oh, you're not?
Thomas Vernet.
Thomas Vernet is the Chief Archivist.
Sorry.
Okay. And you are?
I am a documentarist, research and cultural mediation officer.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We're going to start by, we had a little bit of a project here to put together a tour of the building.
Yes.
And we did a film very, very quickly here, but just to give everyone an impression of the space that we have here, because it's not what it used to look like quite. It's an adaptation of the home of Henri-Louis, as we just heard, and it has been expanded for much more public use. And obviously we can't take you with a camera through the entire building today. There's actually an event downstairs right now. So let's see if we can have a few minutes of the shots that we took just two days ago. The Bibliothèque Musicale La Grange Fleuret is located in a hotel particulier in the aristocratic 8th arrondissement. For those who knew the building before the renovation, you might remember this was a particular type of library, a reading room and a private apartment where, if you were lucky, you might have had the chance to talk with its founder. Sometime before his passing and feeling his health decaying, Henri-Louis de La Grange approached the Fondation Royaumont. He expressed his concern about the future of the library, as well as the outreach of its collections. Together, they outlined a new project for the library that would facilitate the interaction between researchers and musicians, between the arts and the humanities. Between 2019 and 2021, the library went through a period of major renovations, creating new spaces that promote the dialogue between practice and research. Once the collections came back to the library, it was decided to change the name from Médiathèque Musicale Mahler to Bibliothèque Musicale La Grange Fleuret as an homage to its founders and their dedication to the preservation of its musical heritage. One remarkable feature of this new architectural project is that each floor has a specific function, from the ground floor, accessible to the general public, to the fourth floor, the administration, for employees only. At the entrance, you might notice a Mahler bust, a sculpture by Anna Mahler. This was Henri-Louis de La Grange's 80th birthday present that reminds us of his dedication to Mahler. To the left, we see the exhibition room, specially conceived for our cultural activities with middle school pupils and the general public. Going upstairs, we enter the music room with its pleasant, warm acoustics, very well suited for chamber music. We also sometimes host conferences and gatherings in this space. Opposite, we have a room quite fitting for undergraduate seminars. We continue to the second floor, where you see the new main reading room, which is the core of our reference library. We've reserved this room for the consultation of printed documents and audio material. On the courtyard side, you will see the magnificent salle de miroir, the mirror room, where we receive our special guests. This was Henri-Louis de La Grange's dining room and has been kept as it was. We keep on going to the third floor, to the documentation center, a second reading room intended especially for the consultation of archival material. Here we keep Henri-Louis de La Grange's private library, his collection of Mahler-related books and journal articles, and his documentary files. Finally, we enter the Salle des Trésors, a room that we seldom open to the public. It is a room that has a double function, an exhibition room for the most valuable items in the collections, and a gateway to the safe. Some of you will recognize the signed portraits that decorated Henri-Louis de La Grange's study, arranged in the same fashion today. In all, the Bibliothèque Musicale La Grange-Fleuret is a fitting tribute to the man who dedicated his life to music, above all, to the life and works of his singular passion, Gustav Mahler. That's a wonderful tour of where you work.
Yes, of course. I'm very, very lucky. I cannot believe it.
How long have you been working here, Gabriela?
1 year, 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Now, we're going to dive into the Mahler riches very, very soon, but there is a lot of material here in this collection from quite a few composers, right?
Yes, and just not composers. Of course, we have Mahler, but also we have Rossini, Offenbach. I know it's a different register, but still there are famous composers, French minor composers such as Charles Coplin, Claude Badif, André Jolivet. And then we have musicians, pianists, Patrick Cortot, Marguerite Blanc, 20th century pianists like Claude Elfer. So yeah, we have singers, Selma Kurz, you might be interested.
Yes, yes.
And then we have a collection of musicologists, critics, journalists, and also amateurs, because you know there is Paul Guillaume Lallemand, who was very important for the introduction of Mahler to the French public, and it was not an easy task at the time.
And it's so tell us what are in the holdings, because one thinks of, I don't know, manuscripts or paper, but there's all kinds of objects here, aren't there?
It's so many type of documents you have, from the sketches, the manuscript material, the text, the music, and then you have the printed material, but the printed material is annotated, and it's the type of document that is very much requested by students in the conservatory years, that they want to know how to play something. But later we have a very big collection of iconography, photographs, concert programs, historical concert programs, billboards, posters. We have also audiovisual material, 8mm films, 16mm films, and of course, some objects, because there are things that are very meaningful to these composers, to these musicians, and yes, tell us another story of these people.
And are these materials all from Henri-Louis' collection, or have things also been brought here?
We have a very big distinction of these two different sets of documents. There are things that were given or purchased by Henri-Louis and Maurice Fleuret, and there are later things that were given to the library by musicians or their families, that they really wanted to give it to the library.
And of course, cataloging this is an enormous task. I understand this is still a work in progress.
Yes, but we had to give credit also to Elena Bartonneau, who worked for a very, very long time in here. She takes care of the job of describing the manuscript, especially the Mahler collection. And we keep on doing it today. But there is another thing. Today we have the ever-evolving digital tools. And you can go into further detail into the description of the manuscripts. And that allows us to create connections between and within the collections.
And what if you're interested? What if you want to come here and use the facility? And how do you gain access to coming here as a scholar or as an interested amateur?
Well, first thing is to write us, to me, to myself or my colleague. And you have to specify exactly what you are wishing to consult, to have a look. And later, if possible, state your state, if you are a researcher, if you are in any affiliation, your role, and also the purpose, because it's very important. If it is for a PhD, if it is for a publication, an exhibition, anything. And after that, we will transfer this email to our trustee, the COMEX, what we call, which is the trustees that are in charge of the Mahler collection and the Henri-Louis and Maurice Floret, and they will study this demand. So if whether they accept or deny this demand, we will later get back to these people that are interested in the collections, and we will try to arrange a meeting.
It sounds a bit restrictive, but you must have, in other words, very good reasons for coming here, I would think. That's what it sounds like.
Yes, of course, and I'm very glad you asked the question, because we are responsible as any other patrimonial institution of the preservation and the conservation of documents. We are entrusted with that mission, and that means that we have a role for the future. That's why we privilege people that have a scientific primordial interest in the documents.
You mentioned digitalization. What percentage of this might already be available in that form? And is that an ongoing project as well?
So far, the digitalization,
digitalization. I have trouble with the French, don't worry.
It was done as long as they were asked. So, for example, some people ask for this set of documents. So we have some recurring demands. More or less, we get through. But we need to reflect in the future for this very big project in the future to give access and preserve the documents too.
To make it systematic so that
maybe not everything, but the things that are more delicate and need more care, and the things that are quite solicited.
We have a few objects here we're going to be looking at very shortly that are very much in demand, I'm sure. So our viewers will have a chance to see it vicariously through our presentation today. Well, this is all very, very important, and I want to thank you for your work, not only that you do every day, but you've done for preparing for the show and during the show. So thank you very much for coming, Gabriela Elgarrista. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, if you are with us live, feel free to send us questions through the chat. We will be happy to answer these at the end of our hour and address them to any of our guests, and we'll be happy to do our best to answer your questions. So let's jump right in. To get an overview of the Mahler holdings here at the Bibliothek in terms of the Mahler world, I'm going to turn to our musicologist friend, Anna Stoll-Knecht, who is joining us from Locarno, Switzerland. Welcome, Anna.
Thank you, Martin. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. Sorry, I don't see. Voila. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you online, even if I wish I would be with you on location.
Tell us a little bit about your role here at the library.
So I'm research associate. We are two research associates, Benjamin Garzia and myself, and Benjamin you will meet in a bit. So basically our main mission is to act as sort of to do some consulting specifically for the Mahler Fund. We also do we can work to provide assistance to Mahler scholars or researchers or students who come to see archives and have specific questions. We can try to assist even from a distance. And we also, one of our mission is also to help design projects to highlight the collection and the la mise en valeur, the highlight of the Mahler funds. So we do several things with this mission.
What type of projects are planned or have been done in the recent past?
So one of the things we do is to organize conferences around the Mahler Fund. So the first one we did last year in September 21 was called Mahler the Interpreter. And so, and you were there as well, so you remember it. This we have done in collaboration with the Philharmonie de Paris. And so it's really one of the plans is to have regularly conferences or colloquia or symposia at the Mediathèque or in a related location, and to try to highlight the collection as much as we can. We are also involved with Benjamin in several pre-concert lectures. So we have been working with l'Orchestre Les Siècles on also not only on a pre-concert lecture and program notes, but also working with them on the edition and on the performing process from the critical edition from Universal. And we have been working as well as in Orange, talking about Mahler's 8th Symphony. So we are sent everywhere in France to talk about Mahler, to introduce Mahler to the public, and we try to bring as much as possible items or manuscripts or, you know, showing valuable items from the Mahler Fund. We have been also associated to recordings, for example, one that is called Mahler Intime with the trio Georges Sand. So we participate in these diverse activities that are both research and, you know, public events. So we try to mix these two aspects. Mm-hmm.
Well, the public face of musicology is something extremely important, as you say. You know, having this collection is wonderful, but if it's being transported
exactly
to the world, and especially to the Mahler community,
yes.
So if you feel inhibited in coming here and actually looking at all of this, there is a way for all of this to get out into the public. And so you're a little bit of an intermediary, probably, in making sure that happens.
Exactly. Yes.
The world can benefit from it. And of course, there are so many Mahler concerts and projects in the world that now and then a musicologist will say, well, that's not quite how it happened, or maybe this is another source that one should consider. That's all good too, right? I mean, to try to keep some of the factual aspects of it in line. So I think that's wonderful that you can do that. And especially, you said mostly this is in France, right?
Yes, for the moment. But, you know, we must say that we only started this collaboration, Benjamin and I, with the Bibliothèque La Grange Fleuret 3 years ago, I think. So we are still, you know, experimenting with the process of us, you know, designing projects to highlight the collection. So I would say we are at the beginning of this, and we are always, you know, happy to have more ideas as to how we can actually bring the richness of this collection to a wider public. So it's just the beginning.
Of course, you also have your own work. And when you were here on the Mahler Hour last season, we talked about your book on the 7th Symphony. We did not get to talk about the sources then, but that was one of the main pillars of that book, and one of the contributions to understanding this work. So we can do that now. And I'm sure there's wonderful aspects of this collection that have, in fact, assisted you. We happen to have a manuscript here, I think, that's very apropos.
Yes.
Show it to our viewers here. And of course, we have some photos as well, which make talking about it a little bit easier. So here I have these incredible riches in front of me. So here this is the document that we're talking about, in particular, this, which is very, very rare.
Yes.
This is a torn out from a sketchbook.
Yes.
With Beethoven taking his walks, but we don't have very many of these for Mahler, do we?
No, we know that Mahler was using sketchbooks to write down his early ideas, and we know from thanks to Nathalie Bauer-Lechner that Mahler was walking around with these sketchbooks as early as 1896, but especially from 1901. But only 2 of these sketchbooks are known to survive. and both of them are in Vienna, one at the Nationalbibliothek in Vienna and the other at the Theatermuseum, one containing material for the 9th Symphony and the other for 6, 7, and 9, and of course, lots of unknown material. But what we have in Paris that, to my knowledge, doesn't exist elsewhere in other collections of Mahler manuscripts is these torn out sketchbook pages. So pages that were torn out from sketchbooks that are very similar to the one in Vienna, to the two of them in Vienna. And so on these 2 pages, for example, we have material that has been used in the finale of the 7th Symphony. And it actually starts, you cannot see it, but it actually starts on the right page. And then it goes on the left. And so the material is crossed out, which is Mahler's usual way to signify that the material has been used in a symphony. So it's an early stage, but actually, if you look at the notes, it's already very close to what you have in the final version of the 7th Symphony. And on the back of these pages, you have this unknown material, ternary, so it's in 3/4 in A major, not related to any known Mahler work.
And what is and not crossed out.
Not crossed out, exactly. And what is really striking in that in the folder that you showed before, you have different pages torn out from different sources. But what you have on these 2 pages is related to what you find on other torn out sketchbook pages, which is, I think we have an example of the next page, exactly. So this is another page that belongs to the same folder. And when you see below the red pencil, you have the indication Adagio 7. And here you have the beginning of a sketch in A major 3/4 that keeps going on the verso of this page and is actually related to the unknown material that we found on the other page. And so we don't really know what this Adagio 7, if Mahler sketched this material and at some point meant to use it in the 7th Symphony, but that must have been at an early stage when he could have been thinking about having an Adagio movements in the 7th. We know that he had already sketched the 2 Nachtmusiken, the night music, early on, and that after he was at work on the first movement, the scherzo and the finale. So this Adagio 7, we don't really know when he meant to use it, and it's even more a mystery because on top of this Adagio 7, you have 2 little sketch that actually belong to the 8th Symphony. So on the first system, you have a violin line. If you're interested, for those of you who are interested, that is found at rehearsal number 13, between 13 and 14. It's a violin sort of counterpoints to what the main thing that is going on. And just below it, you have this inscription: Auch probieren die Lücke vor der Fugato. Mit dem verkürztem Gegenthema, and you have a fugato on the main theme. So you cannot see it really well, but you have this sort of very, very short experiment to do this fugato on the first theme. So we have 2 little fragments of music that ended up in the 8th Symphony, and below we have this Adagio 7 unknown music. So this for me is one of the most amazing page that we have in this glorious collection of manuscripts for Mahler, but we still have some mysteries that beg to be solved. And so I still don't know, what it means about the dating of this page, that you have this material that was maybe meant for the 7th, and then this material that ended in the 8th Symphony.
Well, I mean, it's so characteristic, this music of the 8th Symphony, that it doesn't seem to be coincidentally conceived and then later turned into the entire massive first movement. So one has to wonder what is happening in terms of the anticipation of a work he hasn't written yet, or it could be as banal as the fact that he just took a piece of paper that was left over, that it was on his desk, and he scribbled down something, because supposedly the Eighth Symphony was written in this ceaseless wave of inspiration. I mean, he talks about this being done within weeks in 1906. And so as you say, it opens up as many questions as it answers. And it is, of course, endlessly fascinating. Sometimes the more you get into this, the less you know.
Exactly.
We ask even more questions of the material than we thought we needed to. So,
Martin, can I just add one quick thing before you move on? I just wanted to say something about the collection that I think is invaluable, is the fact that the Mahler, the Bibliothèque La Grange Fleuret is a documentation center with, published material, but we also have non-published material that is incredibly valuable, PhD thesis, master thesis, etc. So this is really an incredible source. And just, I wanted to say that this collection really reflects the intimate relationship that Henri-Louis had with Mahler, both through his music and through his relation with first Alma and then Anna and then Marina. And that there is something absolutely unique at the Bibliothèque, is that you can have access, if you're working on it and if you're doing serious scientific work, you can actually have access to Henri-Louis' working materials. And this is really very moving because, I don't know many scholars in the world that actually give access to their own working documents. And this is absolutely unique and moving to see that Henri-Louis was in correspondence and in touch with people from all over the world, not only scholars, but also artists and just Mahler lovers and people who would write to him, with information. And he kept all of this. And so I just wanted to add this, about the unique aspect of the Mahler collection in Paris, is that it has a very personal and intimate touch that you will not find anywhere else. That's what I want to say.
Very good point. It's not a public facility where things were anonymized and put aside.
Yes, exactly. It has Henri-Louis' touch, and this is really, it makes it very special.
Right, and as I and many other Mahler scholars, I'm sure yourself included, making the pilgrimage here was part of what you did as a Mahler scholar. And if your passion resembled his, you were always invited. It was always a wonderful experience. So thank you for pointing out. That's a very, very interesting point. Thank you very much, Anna.
Thank you, Martin. My pleasure.
Bye-bye. There is, in fact, another manuscript in the collection from the Eighth Symphony. And to look at this and more, I'm going to have the help of the conductor, Benjamin Garzia, who's also a research associate of the Mahler collection at the Bibliothèque. Welcome, Benjamin.
Thank you, Martin. Hi.
Hi. All right, so you and I have the pleasure of going into some of the details here. But first, I'm going to ask that we look at the Eighth Symphony, and because this is a very different kind of Eighth Symphony manuscript.
Yes.
One that is, I think, I'm going to show it here, and then we'll have some, I think, some photos that we can use. So these are the manuscripts we're talking about. If you see at the top of this page, it says Einlage, which means this is an insertion. It's a very, very important type of document that one doesn't find very often in Mahler. There are a number of examples in the world. But tell us, what is this? What is this document, Benjamin?
So this first page is some bars from the first movement. And what I would like to say first in introduction about these two pages is that the fact that when you think about the Eighth Symphony of Gustav Mahler, you think huge, you think cosmos, you think every superlative words. And when you see this page, you see that the way Mahler seemed to wrote it, it's kind of different of just only huge and only strength. You see that the gesture on this page is quite simple, very light, actually. There is just a few lines like this, and very, very simple in the way of expression. I mean, I have the luck to conduct the Fourth Symphony in 2 days here in Paris. And you have to know that, I speak to the audience, that you have to know that in this fourth symphony, the gesture of the music is very, very much more complicated than in the eighth, because you have maybe for two notes, you have strings playing crescendo, decrescendo, the woodwinds for the piano on the second note, and you know all this gesture gives to Mahler's music one of, I think, his its most important parameter, like the fragility of the music. And that's, I think, why Mahler music is so important for all of us, because it's in the same time cosmic and universal, and in the same time very human and very fragile, and we have to protect it. And that's why I wanted to point this fact, that the Eighth Symphony, we know that Mahler for once knew where it will be created, how it will be created, more or less. And
you mean where the performance space?
Exactly, exactly. And for once he knew that he could effectively bring something huge, great, as the cosmic forces he wanted to translate in music. And my theory is that because of course each symphony he had just written was for him the best one, of course, but I still think that this one was particular. He said that all the seven previous symphony was like a Vorspiel for this one. And when we see how it really happened, what was the success of this premiere, maybe he was right to think that this one was special. And my point is that I can of course prove it. I can't prove it, but I'm very, very optimistic under the fact that if Mahler had maybe 10 years more to live, he would have retake this particular symphony and redo the orchestration for it to be played in some smaller concert house. Because if you have 1,024 people on the stage, it's insane to think that you have to perform it for 800. You know.
Well, you could say that Veni Creator Spiritus, when you invite the creative spirit, you never know what's going to happen, right?
Exactly.
And in some ways, this is what happened.
Yeah.
And I don't. It's hard to imagine him asking himself that when he felt inspired. We know of all the symphonies that he wrote, this was the one that probably came to him the fastest and then most complete. And perhaps, as you indicate, less fragile in the sense that it was less sculpted. It was just one outpouring.
Exactly.
And of course, he had no time to think about and re-perform this piece. He died less than a year later.
Yeah.
And so his relationship to the score, as we know with the Ninth and Das Lied, he never had a chance to even hear them.
Absolutely.
To rework them, to refine them, to put in all the markings that you were suggesting as well. So especially at the manuscript stage, because I think you and I talked about this today. We agreed this is probably 1906. This is still a very, or maybe 1907, but an early stage before he actually had it performed.
Absolutely. The two options is or 06 or 10 for this add-on, but I think it's not very, very possible to add this kind of structure changement during the rehearsal, during the week before the premiere. You know, it's too much complicated to do it on each musician part and each chorus part and solist.
And we know that the piano part had been prepared a good 8 months before the premiere.
Yes.
So it must have been complete by then, I would imagine. We don't have time to go into what this represents. We could tell you the measure numbers and so on, and ask why he needed to rethink those portions.
Yeah.
But we don't have hours. We have an hour, and we'll have a hard time keeping to that. So we're going to keep moving. I'm going to go to another manuscript, which is a favorite of mine, because it's from the Third Symphony, something I spent a lot of time thinking about. And it's moving to me because this is a manuscript that Henri-Louis showed me personally when I visited him here many, many years ago. And it is a remarkable sketch. I can show you, it's in the glare, you can't really see it well. maybe Marco can give us a photo. No, maybe we don't have a photo of this. Okay, well, it is from the second theme of the finale of the Third Symphony. And you can tell, even though it's difficult to see here. Oh, we do have it. Okay, maybe can we blow up the beginning of that? Because you can see, all right, even if we can't blow it up, you can see that he writes all of this music in 3 or 4 staves, which is a short score version of his musical thinking. One that was very common in the early stages of his creation. It's also a continuity draft. And with these 3 or 4 staves, he was able to indicate types of instruments, timbres, groups of instruments. What's remarkable about this manuscript is that even though it seems to be very, very early stage of this second theme, it's almost replete. It's almost absolutely complete and unchanged as it went into the final version. And you can tell even in his quick handwriting and getting all this down that it was pretty much perfect the first time, which is just miraculous. I frankly don't even know if this has been published. This is an extremely valuable document. Oh, here we go. Oh, there, you will probably recognize it, those of you who can read the notes here. And it is as I said, an early version of that second theme of the finale. He writes Streicher at the top, S-T-R-E-I-C-H, indicating strings, which indeed is the instrumentation there. Anyway, one of my favorites, and it just speaks to the incredible, not only creativity, but the deeply finished version of creativity that he was able to show in this reduced format. Okay, and from there he would go then to a draft of the full score, and after that he would then copy out in even more fully the full score version of what he had in mind. And for that, we have an example too. Yeah. And perhaps one of the most moving examples in all of music history, but of course, I and many of you are partial, I know. This is the Ninth Symphony. So we're going to show you here. This is the beginning of the Ninth Symphony over here. And you can see the first few measures for those of you who know and love the Ninth. This incredible piece of music that you all know and love so dearly. I want to explain a little bit about why we're starting the movement over here. And let's put this down for just a second. It has to do with the way Mahler wrote his scores. What he would do is he would take something we call a bifolio, which is basically a large piece of rastrated paper folded in half, each then providing a page of writing. So you can imagine this is then folded in half, page 1 here, page 2 here, page 3 here, page 4 here. But if you open up to the beginning of the movement, you end up with a very strange thing. You end up with the music starting here and the last part of the music on this bifolio being over here. So this explains why we showed you the beginning of the Ninth on the left-hand quadrant, so to speak, of this manuscript. Let's go back. There is, of course, much more to see here, and we don't really have a lot of time to explore it, but this is one of the great, and this would be then the last page of the Ninth. This is, again, this is the first full orchestral version in Mahler's hand of the Ninth Symphony, the last page of the finale over here. And if we can go down further to the bottom, you saw this pointed out by Henri-Louis in the film segment we showed you, the last few bars of the Ninth. And most importantly, in some ways, Welt, world, lebe wohl, farewell. Pianissimo. And he signs, he dates Toblach, and he dates the letter, dates the manuscript and when he finishes this manuscript in Toblach. in 1909. For those of you who know and love this music, it's I think you can understand the reverence with which one even approaches this physically. Now, what kind of thoughts do you have, Benjamin?
I can describe it because I'm so lucky to have access to this kind of document. And I think to see it in paper, in real paper, and touch it, makes me feel that so there is no cosmic thought, there is no cosmic without just a very few things at the beginning, you know, and that's the point of Mahler music, and that's so incredibly universal, so incredibly for everyone, and so incredibly for each one of us in the same time, as Vincent just told before. And I was there when Enyawu Hinbal thought that, oh, when I heard this music, I thought that it was my music. And I think every Mahler lover in the world maybe thought the same thing in the first listening about this music. I think Mahler was like a prophet about just being a human with weakness, strengths, dreams, nightmares, and every step he moved forward. Even when he felt, he just never gave up.
No.
And there's, in this fact, is an example for all of us as a human being and as an interpreter. You can't imagine, of course.
The compassion is what, for me, is the most striking aspect of Mahler's, not only musical personality, but as a human being. And of course, I think that's one of the timeless aspects of this symphony, the fact that we feel so moved internally by the sounds of, as you say, there's a material aspect somewhere, and yet we're taken to a new place by it. There is one more type of document, if you will, here, and it's a very, very important one for Mahler research, and it is the diary copies of Nathalie Bauer-Lechner. There are many, many things to be said about these books. We have a fair number of them here, but it is only the tip of the iceberg, as we say. Henri-Louis was fortunate to acquire many of these notebooks from the Bauer-Lechner estate, but only after many of them had been lost or destroyed by the family. So we really were he was only able to rescue the last bits. We know that Henri-Louis benefited greatly from having rescued these, because often in his biography, you'll see a reference to the Mahleriana collection in the De La Grange fund. And in fact, he was drawing on this information in a very privileged fashion. These notebooks, all of them that have survived at the very least, are going to be published in their entirety. We have some of the books published, or some portions of the books published already, in the latest one being in 1984. But we will be producing a full version of these before Henri-Louis passed away. He gave permission for these to be published. So we're still working on them. I want to just show you a little bit of what they look like. Here it says Mahleriana 1 H. Mankiewicz Gehörig. You can maybe just see that, which means this volume belongs to Henriette Mankiewicz, who was a friend of Nathalie Bauer-Lechner. She had these prepared and copied for Mankiewicz, and inside there's a frontispiece, this being volume 1 of Mahler, and we have an introduction, if you will, in Nathalie Bauer-Lechner's hand. I don't know if this can be seen very clearly. Oh yeah, you can see that. Nathalie Bauer-Lechner wrote some opening comments, and then if you go to the next page, which begins the diary proper, you'll see that it's a different hand. And in fact, this is, her name was Lux. She worked for Nathalie, and she produced copies, very clean and beautiful copies, a very different handwriting from Nathalie, of hundreds and hundreds of pages of the original diaries. And for those of you who know the diaries, you know how important they are to Mahler's biography. She was a musician. She was a close friend of Mahler, sometimes very close friend of Mahler for a brief amount of time. And they spent about 10 years together in deep friendship. And Mahler divulged to her many of his thoughts around the works that were produced in the 1890s. An absolutely invaluable source for Mahler research, and those that have survived reside here, and we're very privileged to have them as well. Very moving to have them in this collection. I know we've moved past our hour, and I want to be sure that we have enough time to hear any questions that our audience might have. Are there any questions coming in? I've got, oh yes, here we go. So I'm going to read some of the questions that we have here from our audience on YouTube. First question. Here we go. Nick Fisher writes, Monsieur de La Grange's excellent biography of Mahler is currently out of print, at least in the English translation. Do we know if it will be reprinted? I don't know who can answer that question. Can anyone answer that question?
Well, I think at the moment we don't know. It's possible to buy used books, of course, of the 3 volumes in English. The first volume that was totally rewrote with the support of Sybil Werner,
right.
And it is still available. So this one is available, but the other, in fact, we don't know. I would totally support that we will print it, but there is no project at this time.
They were printed by volumes 2, 3, and 4 were printed by Oxford, and I know of no interest on behalf of Oxford to reprint them, which is a shame. They're beautifully produced and, of course, vital to Mahler research. And if you've been online to try to find an old copy, as Vincent indicates, they are very, very expensive, even the used ones, because they're much in demand. Another question from Emmanuel Overbecke. I hope I have pronounced that correctly. The sketches of the 7th Symphony are very interesting. Do we also have sketches from the 6th Symphony? Anna, do you want to join us for that?
Yes, hello again. So, so we do, the thing is that we do have sketches for the 6th Symphony that are in the sketchbook for the 7th. That is located in Vienna. So at the Theater Museum, the small sketchbook, you will find inside material for the 6th Symphony, for the 7th, and for the 9th Symphony, as well as unknown material. But in Paris, I don't think we have sketches. I think we don't have sketches for the 6th Symphony, because on these sketchbook leaves, the small ones we looked at, we have 7th Symphony, we have 8th Symphony, and we have lots of unknown material that, you know, nobody knows. Nobody was able to make a connection to any known work yet, but we don't have anything in Paris for the 6th Symphony.
There is more information probably on sketches in some of the secondary literature, as you.
Yes, one thing that I didn't say, though, that is very, very interesting is that the small sketchbook pages that we saw are very closely related to much larger pages that are in the Modern Hour collection in Munich. Mm-hmm. So you know, you can find, and also something else is that we do have, you know, Alban Berg described many of the sketches when Alma Mahler asked him to go over Mahler's sketches for the publication of the facsimile of the 10th Symphony in 1924. So Alban Berg made comments about the sketches that he was looking at. And one thing that is very interesting is that the cover that was written by Berg that we have in Paris only corresponds to one sketchbook leaf, and the other sketchbook leaves are described, that we have in Paris, are described by a cover that is found in New York at the Morgan Library. So, you know, you have a sort of web of manuscripts that relate to each other between Munich, New York, Vienna, and Paris. And it's also material for the 6th Symphony is also found on these Modern Hour sketches. So you have like, all this is really interesting.
And the fair copy of the 8th Symphony is also in Munich, just to make it more interesting. You know, it just shows how incredibly busy people like you and I are in nailing. If we want to do any work on the manuscripts, we really have to fly around most of Europe and the United States because they have been so spread out through many owners. Some were given away, many were given away by Alma, and they then turned into collector's items which were sold, and some of them have gone into private holdings that we know about. Very, very long story. The most recent, of course, is the purchase of the second symphony in fair copy that's now in Cleveland, purchased by an Austrian businessman and trustee of the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra. And it just goes to show these things pop up and disappear quite regularly in what is a very, very deep and wide market for Mahler manuscripts. We prefer to have them all accessible in wonderful places like this because they can tell us much more about the music if we have an opportunity to look at them, obviously. All right, I have another question from Nicholas. Hi, thanks for the presentation. The score of the ninth that you showed 10 minutes ago was a facsimile and not the original, right? Wrong. That is the original manuscript, Nicholas, and that's why you can understand the reverence with which we discussed it, being in its presence. Nicholas writes, is the Paris Bibliothèque Musicale La Grange Fleuret the most important archive center regarding Mahler's music, or are most of the manuscript archives still in Vienna and maybe New York City? Well, you're getting to the point that we were just making. Yes, Vienna, New York City, Paris. There's some sources in Munich. There are many, many places on Earth, and again, also some private collections that house still crucial documents in the Mahler world. So no, Paris is one, I would say, of a major center. What is remarkable, though, as you have seen in the program today, on this table, we have represented almost every type of Mahler, every type of musical manuscript that Mahler produced, type of manuscript, from the sketchbook to the insertion to a draft sketch, the four-stage sketch, to the full version of an orchestral score. All of these various stages of Mahler, of his creative process, are represented here. It is an extremely important center for Mahler research, certainly, but there are many, many as well in other parts of the world that one has to take into account. The New York, the Pierpont Morgan Library, the Robert Neiman collection, and the Mary Flagler collection in New York at the Pierpont are also very, very, very important collections for Mahler. Nicholas is continuing to ask, did you know Gilbert Kaplan? How was he? And as a conductor, I'm curious of this apparently strange man. That gets a little bit personal. Yes, I did know Gilbert Kaplan. I'm not going to pass judgment on him as a person or as a conductor. That's, of course, a personal matter, and we may disagree on much of this. I even sang the Second Symphony under Gil at some point in my career, but that's not something for this show, I think. And are there any other questions in this round? Do we have any questions from, I have no more questions coming in through our social media channels, and we are way over time as it is. So I want to just make a couple of announcements. And 2 nights ago, the Vienna State Opera gave the world premiere of an opera that Mahler never wrote. It's entitled Von der Liebe Tod. This sung stage work combines das klagende Lied and Kindertotenlieder in a scenic interpretation starring baritone Florian Bösch with Lorenzo Viotti on the podium. The production will be shown 5 times between now and October 13th, but is also coming back to the Vienna stage in May 2023. We will be bringing you much more information about this in the coming months. I'll say no more, but I hope we'll have a lot more to say, as I say, in early spring. Finally, at Mahler Foundation, we are continually exploring the ways in which we can bring the legacy of Mahler's music and thoughts to a worldwide audience. As part of the new Mahler Hour programming this season, we are introducing something called the Mahler Moment, your opportunity to tell us what Mahler means to you. Provide us with a video and landscape mode, no longer than 1 minute in length, and share with us your thoughts, your inspirations, why Mahler is important to you, or something about that experience that has maybe even changed your life. We will be posting this to our social media and selecting one of them for each edition of the Mahler Hour as we continue through the season this fall and spring. Send your files to communitymanager@mahlerfoundation.org, and we'll be happy to have a look at what you all have to say. So the Mahler Hour, brought to you by Mahler Foundation and contributors around the world, is a monthly streaming event bringing together individuals interested in the composer, the thinker, the humanist Gustav Mahler, as we explore not only his life and works, but also how his legacy still informs essential aspects of the human experience and how we can turn that experience into a force for the good in today's world. Become a member and support our activities. I want to thank our guests, Vincent Mouret, Gabriela Elgarrista, Anna Stoll-Knecht, and Benjamin Garzia, as well as our fabulous one-person production team, who's sitting right behind that screen there, Marco Ayala, our community manager and technical support, who was on site to help me today, and Monica Anguiano, our executive director for administration. I would also like to thank Thomas Darnay, director of the Bibliothèque Musicale La Grange-Folleret, who kindly made the archive and building available to us today, and to Jason Starr for the footage from his film, For the Love of Mahler, the inspired life of Henri-Louis de La Grange. The next edition of the Mahler Hour will be airing in November. That's our program for today. Thanks for watching. We leave the last word to Henri-Louis de La Grange, who in his passion for the composer so aptly summarized the continuing fascination with Gustav Mahler.
Many people in my life who are absolutely amazed to think that I could have spent so many years of my life, so to speak, with Mahler. And of course, I'm the only person who didn't find that strange at all. I think it isn't strange because I think Mahler is so enormously important as a phenomenon, as a man, as a musician, as a composer, as a conductor. Everything about Mahler is so rich. There is something very enigmatic about Mahler's music. Every time I hear a work of Mahler, I always hear something else that I don't think I'd heard before.